Hello, everybody. David Wallach here, New View Safety Coach, and welcome to another episode of the Shut Up David series. Today, we've got our first guest from India, all the way over in India. Although, to be honest with you, here in Perth, Australia, we do have the Indian Ocean, so we're not that far. Maybe a little swim, well, maybe a big swim actually. But our guest today is Abhijith, and he used to be a seafarer. Now, I've got an intro to read for you on him. And he wrote it himself. So it's a very special intro. And I personally love it. I think it's great. And I think a lot of you out there will hear it and it will actually resonate with you as well. Abhijith used to be a seafarer, but now he's just curious. He doesn't really know what he is. He works with a ship management company based out of Mumbai. The company manages oil product tankers and he manages safety. He is loath to use the word safety because it is a word that is nebulous in its definition, and it's something everyone has a construct of their own. But most importantly, because safety is equated to paperwork, which is true. And how do you manage something nebulous? So he wears his designation lightly. I like that. I like what he said there. His curiosity took him to Lund, where he completed a Masters of Science in Human Factors and Safety Science. And since then, he's got even more confused about safety that he wants to really stop talking about it, which is unfortunate because he's come on this channel and that's what we're going to be talking about today. But he says if he had a magic wand, he would sprinkle human factors fairy dust around the maritime industry and while he's at it, here in India as well. Fabulous introduction. Please welcome Abhijith. Lovely to have you on the channel.
David.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank
How are
you
you
for having
doing?
me, David. I'm
No
good.
worries at
I'm
all.
good. Been a little busy, but I'm good.
Let's just point out to the listeners and the watchers, people watching it as well, there is a little bit of a delay between Perth and India at the moment, probably some high traffic through some of the international fiber or optic fiber, or I don't know what happens in the magic between these countries, but there is a little bit of delay, so bear with us there. But we'll keep on going, and hopefully we'll be able to get through this interview. So why don't we give people a little bit of a sense as to who you are and what it is you do? I know you said you started out as a seafarer. How long ago did you do that? And how did you then move into safety role?
I went to sea in '95 after school. So I was 19 then, and since '95 I've been at sea for about 17 years. That's still 2012. So I went up the ranks. You start as a cadet, you go up the rank, third officer, second officer, chief officer, and then I was captain. So I was captain on VLCCs for a couple of years before I stepped ashore. And even stepping ashore or taking up a job in the office, it was not something that I planned. It was something that happened. So we had a second kid, and then we were discussing, oh, maybe it's time to stop, traveling. And that's when I got an offer for a job. I took it up, not really thinking much, except that I need to stay back and not go back to sea. So that's how I stepped ashore. But that was in training. And then that's a couple of, I think, 3 years in training, and then it sort of gets boring because you're doing the same PowerPoint. Someone else makes the PowerPoint. There's a template. You keep just talking about it, and there's no sort of challenge. So it was
Yep.
Getting into that zone, and then I thought maybe I need a change, and that's when I got my friend who called for an opportunity in Doha that was around insurance, Lloyd's agents, CP&I correspondence. So that's the insurance and loss related sort of role in the marine industry. So I did that for a couple of years in Doha, and then again I put down my papers because I wasn't getting the family visa, so I couldn't get my family there. So I thought there's no point in taking up a job ashore without the family being with you. So
Yeah,
then
definitely.
I put in my papers, and that's when a friend called me up for something, and he asked me what's happening, and I said things are good, and I just put in my papers. He said, why don't you send me your CV? So I sent him my CV, and then I got into this role in the sense, this is a ship management company, and I moved in as a superintendent, and that's the first role that most of us take, where you're supporting the ship, where you're doing a lot of firefighting, and I think that's one of the most hectic roles in ship management, because you're always on call. You're always trying to help people on board, support them, build trust, with the ship and the office. So that's a very critical role, but it's a very hectic role. So that's the first role that I've taken, and that was
Did you
about
enjoy
7 years ago. While it lasted, yes. Would I go back and do it? Yes, but not for long, because it takes a toll on your time. It doesn't really allow you much time to reflect. You're mostly fighting fires. You're mostly just trying to help people, and it's a good thing there. Yeah, but it takes a toll on you, in the sense that the demands are quite high. The amount of time you have for reflection is quite less. So and that's the only challenge with the job. If only you had more than 24 hours, right? But we don't, and that makes it challenging. And it was around then. That's about 2017, 18. So as a marine superintendent, you handle the everyday operations of the ship, but you also handle safety. So
right, okay.
You asked me, how did you move into safety? So before that, okay. So how do I move into safety? For us in Maritime, we don't have safety professionals. So we move in from an operational role. We straight move into an office role, and that could have safety. And it all depends on your years of experience that you've had at sea. That's a safety professional. So you don't have a safety professional in the sense that there is a professional safety guy who's had an academic background in safety. So the background that we come with when we handle safety is what we gather at the sharp end.
The experienced
I don't know.
element.
Yes. And is that good? Is that bad? I've heard debates, but I don't know if it's good or if it's bad. But one thing I definitely sort of know is that a bridge won't hurt. And why I say that is because, and the bridge that I'm talking about is between the operational knowledge that you're bringing in from the sharp end, and the lot of theories and the research and the safety science that's around. Right? There's just so much of it, and it would be. What am I trying to get it to? It would be so much more helpful if you used all of this knowledge that you're bringing in from the sharp end and combine that with the theory, with the safety science, right? And understand the new developments, and try and reflect on the changes that you want to make. So a bridge would definitely not hurt, and I would think that that's something that the industry sort of could look at, having a safety professional with an operational background, moving into a more managerial kind of a role, but some sort of a bridge there that connects the sharp end with the theory, and with the evolving theory. The theory and the practice, right? And it's evolving, and there is just so many people talking about so many things, and people fight. There are tribes, and there are just so many views around safety, right? So even with that, if you manage to stay out of tribes, if you manage to keep your mind open, I think there's just so much out there, and somehow that I think could help. So we don't have that. So how did I move into safety? I just moved into safety,
right.
But I think the question more about, I think, David, you might be asking about the academic bit of it. So that movement was very serendipitous, in the sense that I do a bit of reading, right? I mean, not much, but then you're at work, you have some time, you open a tab and you start reading, right? So during one of those browsers that was open and I was reading, I happened to read Holnagel, and I happened to read his ETTO, the efficiency thoroughness trade-off. I somehow remember that was the first sort of I don't know if I can call that an academic text, but at least something that was different, right? And when I read that, it was so I just realized there's another way of looking at the world. Right? There's just so much of difference. Just comparing efficiency and thoroughness and putting it on the balance and saying that you can't be efficient and thorough at the same time, and that makes so much sense, right? And then that got me into a lot of rabbit holes, reading, I don't know. I just kept reading, and that's when I came across, Reason, Rasmussen, Decker, Woods, a lot of papers, a lot of
Holnagel.
books, and I just Holnagel. Yeah, I mean that's who I started with.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, so all of those readings, and that sort of opened up, you know, uh, discourses for me on LinkedIn, because
Yes.
I know LinkedIn gets a very bad name, and
It
maybe
does,
some of
doesn't
it
it?
is deserved. Yeah, it does, and maybe some of it is deserved. But I think for me it was very helpful, because what I did was I put myself out there on LinkedIn, right? I made
Well, that's
myself
how I
vulnerable. I
found you as
started.
well.
Yeah. So I put myself out there. It was you're making yourself vulnerable, because I remember one of the first a post that I put up on Heinrich's pyramid, on how useless numbers are,
Yep.
and it was a very very shallow sort of an article, right? And one of the first comments, I mean, not first comments, one of the comments I had on that is, go do your research, right? And from a very well-meaning person, and I know him very well now, and he's very helpful, very kind. But that was, he says he calls a spade a spade. So
Hmm.
he tells me, go do your research, and I sort of say, I'm sorry, I'm not a researcher, I'm just a seafarer, and I just happen to read something and put it up there. But point me to something, and I'll start reading. So that was so. When you put something out on LinkedIn, you're making yourself vulnerable. You're testing your
Hmm.
own. You're validating your knowledge. You're getting people challenge you. You're getting people to call you stupid. I'm not so many words, but then they do that, and that
It's
helps
true.
you instead of yeah. So when you get into a conversation and there is disagreement, I think that's when you move out and learn something from the
Hmm.
conversation. If you are in a conversation where you agree every time, what are you learning?
Exactly.
So somehow LinkedIn was, for me, very useful, in the sense that I started putting myself out there. Of course, you like the likes and comments, and the interaction, you like it. But I think most importantly is the value that was bringing me, uh, that it was bringing me, because it pointed me to different directions, different authors, different profiles, different professionals. It just sort of opened my world a lot more, right? I got in touch with a lot of people, and so so during the pandemic, right? This was sometime before the pandemic. So there was Ron Gant.
Yes.
He is on the safety. I mean, the punk rock safety podcast. So
Yep.
He was hosting small sessions online with a group of safety professionals, right? And somehow Nipin Anand, led me to that. He said, because Nipin knew that I had this interest, right? Because of what the chats that I had with him on LinkedIn. So he said, I see you're curious. Why don't you go check this out? And he pointed me to Ron's post, and that was an invitation to join an online a cohort, where you just sort of met and discussed and spoke about without any fear or anything. So I joined that, and there again I was like, ooh, I mean, they're talking philosophy, they're talking big stuff, and I'm like, okay, I can't understand all of this, but they were all willing to listen, willing to accept my questions, and most of them, it's sometimes the psychological safety thing, right? They talk about making yourself vulnerable, taking that personal risk, not being afraid of ridicule. Somehow that space allowed me that, and that
Yeah.
just,
Right. Okay.
yeah, so
That's
that just
great,
got
isn't it?
me
That's
more and
that's that
more.
community. That's that community that they've developed there, which is, look, this is not about what we know. This is about what we can share, and this is about passing on
Absolutely.
the knowledge to other people as well.
Absolutely. So I think that was great, because there was no expectation of anything. No one was selling themselves, right? No one was out there saying, "Come buy my product." I'm the safety guy you need. No one was doing that. It was all about sharing, and that's something the pandemic did to me, because it allowed me the small community that would meet, I think, once in a fortnight, once in 14 days, and then you would just talk. And I recognized that I was possibly the least smartest person in that room, and that is a huge advantage, because once you are at that level, anything that comes to you is a plus. So I was
Yes, exactly.
I was gaining every single conversation, and I would wake up sometimes at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, because time zones, right? I mean, yeah, it's you need to we manage time zones, and COVID allowed all that, and you recognized, and it just gave us so much more opportunity to connect around the world, right? I'm talking to you in Australia, Ron is in the US. There are people I know in the UK, Europe, I'm in Brazil. So it's just amazing how something
It is.
like COVID could do. So yeah, and from there, I heard about Lund there. So
Lund
uh,
University.
yeah, the Lund University. So I wanted to do something
I
something
hope
that
I'm
gave me
saying
so
it right,
solid.
because I hope I'm
Oh,
saying
you
it right, because I
are.
know. Just so people know, just so people outside of India know as well. Lund. Apparently, the word Lund means something very different in India, and I was saying it the incorrect. Apparently,
Yeah.
I got it right that time, which is good, because I don't want to be saying the wrong word.
So yeah, I mean, people have asked me, how come you found this university to do this, right?
It's
So
a very
anyways, so
prestigious university.
absolutely. So I was trying to found my knowledge on some kind of a base, that I could say that I had this, because I was reading a lot of stuff, I was talking to a lot of people, but it was not founded in anything structured.
Hmm.
So and that's when I heard about the university. It was someone, people spoke about it during one of the sessions, and then I started following the university. And then we had who we call JB, Johan Bergstrom. He was heading this MSc program in Lund a couple of years ago. So he put up a post on LinkedIn saying that applications open for the MSc program in human factors and safety science. I said, wow. And then I looked that up, and then I reached out to him and I asked him, see, I'm not a graduate, I'm just a high school student, because you move into the merchant navy with just a technical qualification, you're not academically qualified.
Yep.
I asked him if I'm eligible. He said, of course you are. So anyone is eligible, right? I mean, so that's how I got into Lund. And yeah, and then it has been an exhilarating journey, a unique 2 years of my life, the last two and a half. I don't know if I'm going to have those 2 years. I mean, that was an experience, and uh, it had everything. It had everything, and I'm just sort of recovering from it. And I'm lazy now. I just don't want to do anything, because that 2 years is sort of
It, it
given me so
fries you.
much. It's taken me
Yeah.
so much. Yes, it's taken away so much. And somehow I have the thesis as something tangible to show that I've managed something, right? So, and the thesis that was accepted. So that is the only validation I have. Otherwise, I wasn't sure what I was doing, but it was an enriching experience, and it took a lot away from me. And I think more than the thesis, I think more than the MSc itself, I think it is what it has done to me, right? As a person, I think it's made some changes, right? So
Made
the
some
whole
changes in
program
a good
has
way.
absolutely, yes, in a good way. So it is what it has done actually is tell me how little I know.
Yeah, and that's
Uh,
always a scary
yeah.
thing, isn't it? As well, to be honest with you, I've got this love-hate relationship with education. I've been in higher education now for probably the better part of 7 years. So there's 3 postgraduate degrees in that time, and I've just started a master's at the University of Sydney as well. And I love learning, but I hate learning as well. I've got this real love-hate relationship with it, because I love the idea of learning lots of new things and structures, like you said, and you know where is the world heading, and show me everything new. But on the flip side of that coin, you you get to realize how little you know, and how much everybody else knows, and how little you know, and how much you have to learn just to be
Yes.
competent. And that's very scary, and that's very daunting experience, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. So when you reached out to me, I was like, why is he reaching out to me? What do I have to offer? Right. And I think I shared this with you, but yeah, I don't know what I have to share, right? I really don't know. I'm saying there's just so much out there, and there's so many people who know a lot more. So what can I offer? So
But
I mean,
there's
that was my
always,
first thought when you called me.
I know, and this is something that, I mean, we've spoke several times before this as well, and we message as well and we keep in contact. And there's something that that I've picked about your character, apart from your huge curiosity, which has got you to where you are now. Because I personally think you have to have that sense of curiosity to learn, to think, what else? What is, this can't be the only way of doing this. Whatever it is
Yeah,
you're doing doesn't have to be safety. It could be engineering. It could be science. It could be anything. But if you've got curiosity, that's going to drive a desire to learn and to understand more and push those boundaries. Which you've got obviously lots of curiosity because it's got you to where you are, but also your humility as well. Your humility is probably the most humble person that I've met. I hadn't even met you in person, but online. And from where what you've achieved in the industries you've been working in and the variety of jobs you've had within that industry and where you are now. And, even just, well, the masters from Lund University as well, while you've been working, and the way you put yourself out there on LinkedIn and the way you ask questions and the way you're always humble in your acceptance of what you do and what you don't know. I personally find that very very refreshing. And I I reached out because I saw that and I thought, well, that's very different to a lot of safety professionals that are out there, which have this combative stance that they have to take, and they're right and everybody else is wrong, and they've lost that sense of curiosity and that sense of humility again. And I think for things like human factors and for things like new view safety and for human organizational performance, which I believe are still in their burgeoning stages in India as well, it's not as popular over there as what it is maybe in Australia and America and Europe, but it's starting to build up. I think in order to be able to have the senior leadership from the safety professional, they have to instill a sense of curiosity in everybody around them. They have to have that humility that they can share with people around them so that they can be willing to learn as well. And I think, and that's why I wanted to reach out to you, because, and I know you said, there's so many people that know more than you. There's so many people that know more than me as well. And everybody out there. But what you've got is some core skill sets, which so many people don't have, which is curiosity and humility. And that's why I wanted to get you on to talk to you and to learn about those things. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Why don't we talk about where India's at currently? And I know you can't speak for the whole of India. As you understand it, and the safety industry currently in the maritime industry, and what does that look like? Can we give people who are listening and watching a sense of what that looks like currently in comparison to what you see for the rest of the world?
Before that, maybe I mentioned something about my humility and my curiosity, because
Sure.
I think it's a journey. Because when you initially have these new ideas, and like I did maybe 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I think you get to tend combative. You tend to get combative because you've seen this new world, right? And how can others not see it?
Yes.
So
yes.
I think, yeah. So there is that sense when you're the savior of the world, right? I mean, you suddenly found the magic, the silver bullet, and you have it in your hand. You're giving it to everyone. Nobody wants it, and
Yes.
you're like, why can't anyone get it? So there is that sense of that frustration, right?
Yes.
When you've learned a new idea, when you've learned something new, and it's about looking at things differently, and somehow you realize that not everyone shares your view, and
Yes.
that's frustrating. And at that time, I don't know if it's possible to be as humble as so there is a lot of aggression there, right? I mean, there's a lot of a combat. You're combating the rest of the world. You're fighting against them, just changing the world, right? You just want to change the world, right?
Yes.
But I think humility. I think what it needs is a lot of confidence in the knowledge you have. Once you have confidence in what you know and how much you know, and you know that it is a speck of the entire universe that's there of knowledge. All that you know is a speck. And once you recognize that, then humility is, I think, a natural outcome of it, because you're just a speck, right?
Yes.
And suddenly you realize there are different perspectives. Everyone has their own point of view. If they're doing something, it definitely makes sense, right? And maybe you can't understand why it is making sense to them. Maybe that's where you need to work on,
Yes.
right? Because it makes sense to everyone, whatever they're doing. So if someone is doing things in a particular way, there is a reason, because they're definitely not stupid. They're very smart human beings who want to do the right thing, who want to do the best. So if they are doing it in a certain way, it is my failure to not understand what's influencing them.
Yeah.
Right?
I think the same way as well. It's my problem if I can't communicate the benefit of a certain thing. It's not it's not their fault for not understanding.
Yes. So I think a lot of that humility that you allegedly see, I think maybe it's come with time, and maybe that's something that the master's program has done to me. Yeah, hopefully, and in a good way, that is. So, sorry, coming to safety in maritime, right? I mean, so maritime industry, I don't know, in some ways, I think it's one of the oldest industries of transport, right? I mean, before, I'm making an assumption here, because I heard a very long time ago, I think a very senior harbor master in one of his addresses to a small gathering happened to mention this, and it stayed with me. He said, before people invented the fire or the wheel, they possibly learned to float across a stream on a log, and then carry the carcass, the meat pack home, whatever home might be then. So maybe that's the first form of transportation. Across a stream on a log of wood, you're carrying meat. So I think for many reasons, I think maritime industry is one of the oldest forms of transport. That was formalized before anything else. And this industry has a lot of inertia, and it's a very fragmented industry. And when I say inertia, I mean tradition, right? There's a huge tradition, and there's a huge value to tradition. And when I say fragmented, I mean it's not like one ship owner in one country owning a ship registered in that country, employing people from that country. It's fragmented in various ways, right? You have a ship owner who is based out of Greece, maybe. His ship is managed by somebody sitting in Mumbai. I know it's manned by maybe people from around the world, Eastern Europe, maybe Far East, maybe India, Philippines. So these are the largest seafaring source of seafarers. So, and it is registered maybe in yet another country, which is most likely Panama, Liberia, one of those countries, right? So it's very difficult for this industry to sort of organize itself.
Gotcha.
Organically.
It is so fragmented. It's not. Yes, it's not located anywhere specific.
Yes, that too, and not just the location bit, but also the employee bit, right? Different nationalities. The employer is from a country. It's you generally don't even see the owner. It's in some cases it's just a nameplate on a door in some country. So there is that fragmentation. There is that layers that are not easy to access. So it's very difficult, in my view, for this industry to sort of come together and work as one. So what this industry needs is someone to tell them what to do.
Yes.
And
so we're talking regulators.
Yes. So this industry is, I've been saying this for some time, I don't know if I'm saying the right thing, but hugely patriarchal. And when I say patriarchal, I mean it needs the father figure to tell people what to do.
Yes.
And this is right down from the extreme blunt end to the sharp end. Everyone's telling everyone else what to do. Everyone knows better than the other what to do. So this is our industry, right? And so for us,
based on hierarchy within the organization. Is that based on hierarchy?
Yes.
Is it very?
Yes.
Okay, so it's very hierarchical. It's very patriarchal. Yes. So you have a very male-dominated industry as well.
okay, I'm not using patriarchy in that sense, but yes, it is male dominated. We have less than 2% of the entire workforce that are women. That's another battle to be fought. But when I'm saying patriarchy, I'm talking about a father figure, and that could be a female, standing in a position.
Gotcha.
So it's not really. Yeah. So I'm not using patriarchy in that sense. I'm talking in the
So
sense of
maybe,
controlling someone else, telling someone else what to do.
Command and control type.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
So what I was trying to say is heavily regulated, right? And it's regulated by the regulators, and you have the IMO telling the world what to do, and then you have each country adopting those conventions into their own laws and making it applicable for their ships and their seafarers. And then you have extremely influential charterers or cargo interests. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And why I'm saying this is because they are the most influential in the industry.
Oh, right. Okay.
So a ship owner, I don't know, not so much, because he needs the cargo, and there are a lot of ships. So it is a market play, of course. It is a market play. So when there are not enough ships, okay, the ship owners are able to dictate terms, but generally it is charterers who sort of say, this is what I want you to do.
Yep.
So you have industry bodies, not just regulators. You have quasi-regulators. You have regulators who give recommendations that are not recommendations.
They're requirements. They're requirements masquerading as recommendations.
Yes. So they have books, thick books that says recommendations, but you want to do business with me?
They have to be done.
Then recommendation is not recommendation, right? You better be doing that. So, and because of this patriarchal sense, because of this command and control mechanism, because of the hierarchy, because of the fragmented nature of the industry, we all like to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you have someone at the sharp end, someone at the deep end, the sharp end, saying, write this down for me so I can do it. Or I can't do it because it is not written down.
Okay.
So the expectation for things to be written down, the expectation of a standard to be there, it's so ingrained in our industry that it's difficult to imagine any other way.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a very heavily compliance-driven industry. And when I'm saying compliance is required, I'm not in any way saying that you don't need compliance, because compliance serves a purpose. Compliance gives assurance to the customers that you're good.
Yes.
So compliance has its place, but to expect that compliance is equal to safety, now that's a different matter. And that's where I think we are. There's a lot of need for compliance and a lot of expectation that compliance means safety.
Yes.
So
would you say as well that sometimes safety is used as a tool by the workforce to what's the word I'm looking for here, to
not work?
To not work.
So yes, it could happen. And
that's what I was thinking when you were saying that. People saying, I need it written down, I want it written down. It's very, very overly compliance, but it's driven by the front line. So sometimes that can be used as a tool, can't it?
It could, but I wouldn't put this on the sharp end, right? Everyone has their local rationality. So those writing the procedures, those writing the instructions, they do that because they have their local rationality, right? They need something written down because customers expect it, because regulators expect it. So what is written in the safety management system, more often than not, is driven by what do they want rather than what makes sense.
Gotcha.
So why that comes in, people who are writing the safety management system, who are writing these procedures, who are writing the policies, they're doing it with their local rationality, which is to satisfy someone else. Because they are going to come and audit you. They are going to come and check your records and your management system and ask you, you've not got this written down. I don't like you. I can't give you business. right? You want my business, please write this down. So you have that written down, right? I am being a little too judgmental, a little too prejudiced, but this is uh, significantly a major part of the industry. There are people who are doing things differently. There are, including my organization. So there are many organizations who are trying to do things differently, right? But they are still the tiny bit. You still don't have the mass to tip over and shift things. You still this
Gotcha.
tiny bits here and there. Someone's trying to make changes. Someone's recognizing that, oh, work is imagined and work is done. People are talking about it. So there is the sense that procedures need to make sense. So the question you asked, yes, it can be used as a tool, and it is often used as a tool. But I wouldn't put it. I wouldn't put the blame squarely on them. It's the ecosystem.
Yep.
Right. It's the ecosystem. So
it's the expectations. It's always been there. That's just the way we do things currently. And that's a comfortable place for everyone to be in. It's a cultural context as well, isn't it? As you mentioned, India's and correct me if I'm wrong here, I could be going out on a limb here. India itself culturally is quite hierarchical. Is that correct?
I'm not. I'm not very familiar enough to be commenting on it in the sense that I'm very careful, because there's a lot of flack. I know you're in the East, but generally the Western Hemisphere gets, the West gets, right? This is not the way you do things. You need to do the things the way the guys in the East do. That's more holistic. That's better. That's all that, right? I'm a little not very comfortable saying that this culture is that way, or a particular culture is that way. I think it's very difficult to even. I think instead of talking about cultures in such a large sense, if you look at what is tangible and who is sitting next to you and your relationship with that person, maybe that makes a lot more sense, because we all tend to abstract things and say that this nationality is bad or this religion is bad, right? But that's when you abstract it out and say, look at it from a very how do you say that? Look at that as a group. But instead, if I were to speak to someone next to me of a particular religion or a particular nationality, I have a relationship with that person, right? And maybe that's more tangible than speak about cultures in general. And why I'm saying this is because I'm not careful. I'm not comfortable saying that a particular culture is a particular way. But yes, I agree with what you say in the sense that to a large extent, we may be hierarchical. There is a lot of respect for elders. There's a lot of deference to elders. But at the same time, I think we are a very argumentative society. There's an entire book written by Dr. Amartya Sen, the Nobel laureate, who talks about us being an argumentative society. So we like to talk. We like to pick arguments. We like to, so that's also us. And
yes.
I think an argumentative society and a hierarchical society may not actually go, hand in hand.
That's an interesting viewpoint.
But I think the larger point being made, I accept that, it may be hierarchical. I'm sorry for the long-winded sort of
no.
Answer, but
I love it. I love learning. I love learning how different people view different situations, and I put that comment out there purely to get your interpretation as to what the small amount of knowledge which I had about an entire continent, an entire country and culture, which it was very, some people might say it was stupid of me to say that. Some people might say it was brave of me to say that, but I said it with good intent, and you gave me your good intent response, which is all we can ask for when we're having an open dialogue. And your response is perfect. Your response is perfect. Thank you for that. So, okay. So you mentioned we've got these small pockets of curious individuals and curious organizations who are starting to think. I think the term you use, which is a very popular one as well, which is starting to look at works imagined versus work is done, and that's quite appropriate when you're talking about having such a compliance-led industry, especially in the maritime industry, where everything needs to be written down, and it's a case of somebody telling somebody else what to do. So it's very compliance, and it's very command and control. So that element of works imagined versus work is done would be a logical place to start, really, wouldn't it? Is the work exactly as it's written down? You have a master's in in human factors and safety. How have you been able to move the dial in your organization and with your peer group more towards accounting for the human in the system, the human factor element?
Yeah. Now, can I digress?
Of course.
Because I think I have this very nasty habit of saying things that are not really to the point before maybe I get to it. So, and why
I
I
have the
asked if
same.
I could digress is because why I asked if I could digress is because you mentioned human factors and element in around in the same breath, and for me, that's I will come back to work as done and work as imagined, but for me that's quite significant. And why I say that is because in the maritime industry, a word, it's a phrase, right? When you have two words together, so maybe a phrase. The human element is quite popular, and popular. And why I say that is because I don't know if this particular phrase is as popular in any other industry. So we have this. I think maybe from the early 90s when the IMO started talking about human factors. I mean, sorry, a human element, right? So human element is something that the IMO coined sometime in the 90s. Yeah, the International Maritime Organization. Sorry, I thought I was talking to someone from Maritime. So yeah, it is. Yeah. So IMO is our ICAO, and they regulate. They are the ones who churn out documents after documents of conventions, regulations, and everything on how we need to work. And they have good intent. I must say it up front. They have very good intent, and I'm not being sarcastic. They do have good intent. So.
Yep.
So they came up with this term of human element sometime in the 1990s, right? And they recognized that as a key element. I remember they call it a key element of life on board ships. But they go on to say that it is a contributing factor for most accidents. So, so I was reading up on human element, and I was trying to understand how is human element defined. And somehow human element has not been defined anywhere. It is for the reader to sort of interpret what it means. And my interpretation... Yeah, David? Were you saying something, David? Sorry.
No, sorry. I was just
Hello?
agreeing with you.
Sorry.
It's a verbal nod.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So there is. So I couldn't get a definition. I really went around looking around documents, online. I could not find a definition for the human element. So it is left to interpretation, right? So they have plans for 6 years, and even right now there are the entire machinery is working on revising all of this, human element and the training standards and all that. Somehow human element, if you sort of try and interpret a definition, it is about the capabilities and limitations of the human being. It's about upskilling and training the human being. It's about bringing in a better attitude. So it is a complex sort of a issue, right? It's a complex sort of an issue, not defined, but it is left to interpretation. And my interpretation is that it's about the person, right? It's about the person's education. It's about the person's training. It's about the person's attitude and his awareness is, all of that stuff that makes that person, whoever he is or she is or they are. So,
and that differs for you. Human element differs for you, and rightly so, and logically so. Now you've explained it from human factors, which is where I combined the two terms together, not being aware of the context in which what human element means to you. So so now we've kind of defined what human element is. What does human factors mean to you, and how is that different from human element?
Yeah. So just one other point I like to make is because the entire documentation that has come from the IMO and everyone else sort of talks about human element in that sense, right? Now, the Nautical Institute, that's another organization. It's a professional body, and they have an article which they wrote about maybe 10 years ago, where they say that it is a word. The human element is used to describe what makes humans behave the way they do. Now I'm seeing a shift.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a shift from what the IMO is saying or IMO is implying and what the Nautical Institute is saying, right? And now, fast forward to a couple of years ago, when the OCIMF, which is the Oil Companies International Marine Forum, they've published a paper called the Human Factors Approach in 2020. And in that, they very clearly say that, that the OCIMF recognizes that human element is focused on changing the person. And they also go on to add that this is a phrase that may not be recognized outside the maritime industry. And they are proposing that human factors, which is a phrase that is used across oil and gas, aviation, nuclear, railways, and that is the correct term to be used, right? So that's the human factors is coming into our industry through the OCIMF. OCIMF is the Oil Companies International Marine Forum. They are the ones who are bringing in the human factors, the phrase human factors. And they are the ones who are recognizing that human factors is not human element.
Gotcha.
So, but somehow our industry, in your normal discourse, in your normal conversations, in an article, even when people, influential people stand up on the dais and speak, they speak about human factors and human element quite interchangeably. They keep using it quite interchangeably, right? And that for me is a problem. And that for me is a problem because even when we are talking human factors, we are meaning human element.
Yes.
And if we continue to do that, the focus is going to remain on improving the human being, not on improving the systems and the environment around them.
Yeah. If you don't have clarity over the definition, then you're not going to have a focused direction for everyone to travel in.
Yes. And that's for me a challenge, because the industry, right, in the last few years, maybe 2 or 3, that's when the OCIMF published that paper. Or maybe it's 2020, so maybe it's 4 years. So since then, work is imagined and work is done is something that has come into the industry. The human factors is something that has come into the industry. But these are all phrases that are, again, nebulous, that are used interchangeably without much thought. And that for me is a huge problem, because if we don't separate the two, so we're going to continue to use human element and human factors to mean human element.
Yes.
To mean something about the human. And when we do that, the direction we're going to travel in is that, let's train people more. Let's improve their attitude. Let's get them to do better work. Let's get them to be more aware, more careful. That's where we're going to go. And our industry has always been in that direction. So the good work that the OCIMF is trying to do, it might get lost if the industry doesn't recognize the difference between human factors and human element. And you asked me, what's my definition of human factors? I mean, there are a lot of definitions going around, but I think if you something that came to me, my colleagues keep pulling my leg for all this posts that I put up on LinkedIn and human factors. Abhijith has come, so we shouldn't be talking about humans, and we should. I mean, those kind of things. So once we were sitting in an airport in Antalya, we were coming back. So a good friend of mine, a colleague too, he said, I've been hearing you talk about human factors, human element. What's it? Yeah, what's it? Right? I mean, what's the big difference? Is it not the same thing? And then it came to me, I said, he was sitting on a chair. I said, the chair you're sitting on is human factors. And you are the human element. So he said, what? I said, see, you're sitting on the chair in a particular way. You're feeling comfortable because of the chair. You're having this conversation. All of that is because of where you are. And that is human factors. So for me, human factors is the chair. Human element is the person sitting on the chair.
Yes, how the person interacts with the chair, and
how the person interacts with the chair. It's so much about interactions, isn't it? It's so much about and sorry, you asked me about what I have been able to do in my organization to bring workers imagined closer to workers done. I sort of, in my classic way, took a complete detour, went
That's
all around it, and now
I
let me try and
I enjoy listening to you, mate.
thank you. So we see, like I said, our any organization in the maritime world is driven by their local rationality, if I may say that, and which is to earn money, right? And which is that's the business is critical, right? And and why did I say that? Okay, so in what I have been able to do, so to say, is try and bring a shift in language. And why I say that is because all of this is about the Hop principles, if you're speaking about that, right? I think it's about a belief system. It's about the lens you're wearing, right? And as an industry, we have everything. We have investigation methods, we have investigation tools, we have near-miss reporting, we have whistleblower policies, we have the entire thing, right? We have the entire gamut of tools that are available. So I don't think we need more people selling more tools. And that's the problem I have with consultants, and not consultants, but people who start selling tools for the sake of selling tools because it looks good, or, or whatever. So we don't need those tools. What we need is a new lens. What we need is a new belief system. Perspective. Yeah. What you need is a new perspective. And that perspective comes from our beliefs. And those beliefs are formed on certain principles.
Yes.
Right. And for me, these principles, if you can sort of inculcate, or if you can get Hop ingrained into these beliefs, believing that, all of those 5 principles, that people are out there to do a good job, everyone makes mistakes, blaming doesn't fix anything, the contextualized behavior, the entire 5. So if you sort of assimilate those principles, now how does that translate into something tangible? Okay, I believe in that. So how does it translate into something tangible? For me, it translates to something tangible in the words you use, the questions you ask, the way you write emails, the language. Right?
Yeah.
And this again, and for me, I would desist, or I would discourage changing existing systems, because I think they're working. The industry is thriving. Right? The industry is very resilient. Nothing is really going to stop the industry. A collision, a death, a pollution, an oil spill. This is not going to stop our industry. Our industry is resilient. They're happy with the tools they have. So what you need to do is, for me, is just shift the perspective. And that shift in perspective comes with a change in, other way around. So that shift in perspective demonstrates itself by a shift in language.
Yes.
Right? In the language you use. And in the investigation reports you write, you be careful. You're not using normative language. You're being descriptive. You're not looking for solutions. You're trying to understand. You're not trying to find. You're not trying to find and fix. You're trying to understand. So that shift, I think, can be seen in the way people ask questions, in the way people speak to each other, in the way the investigation reports are written, in the way emails are written.
Yes.
Right. So all of these things demonstrates, for me, manifests itself in all of this. So the words one use and language for me. And that's a small shift we're trying in our organization, right? How much of it is there? Because it's a challenge, because it requires very strong belief in these principles, right? Because these principles sound good. You cannot argue against them. They're intuitively good. They're right?
Yes.
So it's one thing to accept and understand them, and one thing to really believe in them. And to really believe in them, it should start making sense. And to start making sense, you have to start believing in them. So it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Which one comes first? You don't know. So you need to start seeing results, right? Okay, I am using a different language, so show me the result. And now that result is not something that's going to come, like that. It's going to take time. This shift are tiny steps in the right direction.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that shift is what's needed, and that shift is what we're trying, without really changing tools, without really changing investigation methodologies and everything. Whatever methodology you use, whatever tool you use, however you report your near miss, right? So long as you have these principles at the back of your mind, you're asking the right questions, you're using the
Yes.
right language. So that's the shift. And it's
Yeah.
even more important in our industry because we're disconnected. And not just a fragmented industry like I spoke about earlier, the ship and the shore are miles away.
Literally.
And yeah, literally. And you
Yeah.
can't see people on board. What are they doing? How much ever you may want to use surveillance, how much ever you may want to keep monitoring them, it's impossible.
Hmm.
You really can't. So if you want to understand what is happening on board, it's very important to make those people on board comfortable talking to us.
Yes.
And that again
Trust.
will come from, trust, all of these principles. So if you sort, then it
Mm.
makes that conversation easy, it makes us trustworthy, right? And it also applies to people on this side, like as a superintendent. If as a superintendent I have to ask the right questions, my manager should ask me the right questions.
Yes.
So it's so because I am pressured to find, or uh, I'm pressured to move in a certain direction to find something. So if I'm always asked to find the root cause, find and fix, so my questions are going to be in that direction. Tell me what happened, I want to fix it.
Hmm.
Why did you do this? I want to fix that. And that conversation, I don't think it encourages building trustworthiness,
No,
right?
it doesn't.
That's actually,
It's a very blame-centered approach, isn't it? As
yes,
opposed to like a subtle change in language from your manager or from from the documentation, which would be, okay, we've had this. What can we learn from this event? It's a subtle change in language, but it
yeah,
it redirects all efforts in a different direction completely, doesn't
absolutely,
it?
absolutely. So what made it difficult for you? Can you just talk me through it,
Yeah,
right? What is
yeah,
it that you want to share with me, right?
yeah,
Because whenever we start an investigation, of course we do the mundane, oh, I'm not here to blame you, we are here to learn. But even with this introduction, uh, you're not really doing something, because the moment you use the word blame, it sort of
yeah,
forms an image in your mind, right? And it's not about actually saying that we're not here to blame and that we are here to learn, but it's about actually demonstrating it without blaming, right?
yes,
And so, and I think we shouldn't even start a conversation saying that, oh, we are not here to blame, we are here to learn, right? We start from a point, respecting the other person and
hmm,
accepting that the other person is a professional who's tried to do their best and is equally competent as you are.
yeah,
But something in our industry is that, right? I mean, because I said, we are these two different this thing. Everyone thinks the other is worse off. So it's
yes,
like me sitting in the office, I would say, oh, those people on the ship, they don't know anything. When I was
mm,
there, I used to do this so much better. These people just don't know anything. Their training is no good. They're not situationally aware. They're not careful. They're not mindful. Uh, they just don't take care. How can they do
yeah,
this? And
yeah,
from the ship side, people on the ship, the seafarers are thinking, oh, those guys in the office, they're sitting and just pushing paper. They're just sending out emails. They
yeah,
just got questions to ask when something happens.
yeah,
They don't really want to understand what's so. That is something that for me the industry needs to break, right? To
yeah,
recognize that people sitting on either side are actually working for the same goal. Somehow the
yeah,
goals are different,
yeah,
and goals are possibly actually different, because
mm,
the person sitting in the office is trying to complete the paperwork, trying to find closure, trying to complete an investigation report, trying to
yeah,
complete things and close things out. And the person on the ship is trying to keep himself safe, say just as much as he can, so that so say just as much as he feels safe to do, right?
yes,
Say
yeah,
no more, just enough, just
yeah,
enough. If I can't
yeah,
hide it, I will tell you. If I can hide it, I will hide it, because this is
yeah,
also reflecting on my performance. You're going to judge me for it. You
yes,
sitting in the office are going to judge me for what I say.
yeah,
So I need to be careful with what I say.
yeah,
And in our industry, that is a bridge again that we need to build.
yeah,
Again, it's happening, and I might be very general. There might be many organizations and many officers and seafarers and superintendents doing it. But if I were to abstract it, then maybe this is a problem that the industry has.
gotcha. It sounds, and uh, we call I know it as fundamental attribution error, which is essentially when other people do something that I think is silly or stupid or against what I think, it's all their fault. They're the silly people who should know better, and I know better than them. That's the fundamental attribution error. But you're right. I mean, it's very prevalent in day-to-day life as well. When you're driving your car and someone cuts in front of you, oh, they're stupid, they can't drive. You don't know. They may be rushing
Would you just say
to the
that much, or would
hospital.
you say more, David?
Sorry, what was that?
When someone cuts, sorry,
When
I
someone
was
cuts in
asking, if someone cuts you on the road, would you just say what you said, or would you say more?
I was being polite for the YouTube channel, but you know what I'm saying now, don't you? You automatically, it's a human instinct. You automatically say, "Oh, stupid person, they don't know how to drive. What's wrong with them? They're not as good as me, blah, blah, blah." Whereas you don't know the local rationality of that person. They could be rushing to hospital because their kid got
Absolutely,
had an accident or something on those lines. And but that's where you need to have the intent, the good intent. And this is in the organizational sense, isn't it? The good intent, okay, that person did that. Obviously, they're in a rush because there's an emergency. And you need to have that in the organization in order to be open to listen to those stories from people in different parts of the organization, don't you? And that's the hard bit. That's the hard bit, isn't it?
Absolutely. So I think that's where the belief. Oh, I want to say this because I think I never noticed this. And I just looked at myself and I was nodding my head, the Indian head nod, right? And why I say this is because I have a friend who's in Lund. He's a Belgian, right? And he was like, he sees me and he keeps nodding, right? I mean, he's just pointing that out to me. So I think there will be many viewers who are seeing me nod my head and think, "What's this?" So I think maybe just ignore my head nod.
I think I've been nodding my head more than you, to be honest with you, mate. Just listening to you and agreeing with what you're saying. I loved what you said when you said, "Look, I don't think the tools need to be replaced. We can work with the tools that we currently have. We just need to change the perspective that people look at those, that people use those tools with." And I think that's such a powerful thing, because people might hear these new view safety, HOP, whatever it is, and go, "Oh, that's going to mean we need to scrap everything and start again." No, it doesn't. It's not a tool-centered approach. It's a philosophical perspective, intent, learning perspective, that you use your current tools. Yes, you can change them over time if you want. You can reword things from let's give an example. I reworded an incident investigation to a learning opportunity, and it's a subtle difference, but it makes a huge impact on how people approach that particular activity within your the organization. But that's amazing. How are you going about doing that? And are you unique, or is this something that you see in the industry generally? Is there a peer group of other safety professionals in the maritime industry, or is this something that you're pretty much on your own at the moment?
How do you not sound immodest?
Good luck with that.
No, why I am what I'm looking for is there is no peer group of maritime safety professionals who are aligned with the new view safety. I know a couple personally. They are not as vocal on LinkedIn and social media. So I'm not saying that because you're vocal on LinkedIn that makes you an expert, but it allows you to understand perspectives.
Yes, definitely.
Right. So if you look at the safety related posts from the maritime field on LinkedIn, or anywhere for that matter on social media, you really don't see the discussion around new view safety. So and structurally, like I said earlier, OCIMF, the Oil Companies International Marine Forum, and of which are members, Shell, BP, and all of the big players, right? They're members of this organization. They are trying to shift. And they are the publication I spoke to you about, on human factors. So they are trying to shift, but I think it's difficult. Because if you read the document they published, and if you read it carefully, you understand that document is a compromise. And why I say this is because the people who are drafting the document, I can imagine them sitting in a room, and then you have someone with a very strong hop perspective and someone with a traditional mindset, and trying to come to a common ground, right? Because, okay, I am not quoting this verbatim, but I think this is what essentially that sentence said. So there is a sentence in the publication which says, tanker safety, tanker as in oil tankers, the ships that carry oil, oil tanker safety depends on the attitude. I'm sorry, I'm getting it totally mixed up. But what I'm saying is there's something in that publication which talks about, which fixes the responsibility of safety on the seafarer.
On the seafarer only.
On the seafarer only. And which, okay, I wouldn't say only, but I think that sentence sort of reads in that way. I'm being very careful because
Sure.
I don't recall that. It's just coming off, on the top of my head. But why I'm saying is because there are instances like this. If you, a careful reading of the publication sort of shows you that there is a conflict among the authors of the document, and they have sort of agreed certain sentences, which I know that someone sitting there who had a hop perspective would have fought tooth and nail to say, hey, let's not write that. Let's not write that. Oh, no. How can we not write that? Seafarers must be responsible. They're, it must be on them to maintain. No. So I'm seeing that conflict in the document itself.
Yeah, right.
Right. But that requires a careful reading. So what I'm saying is, whoever has written this document, the working group that drafted this document, right? And I am imagining that they're all members from these very big organizations, and they are very well-read, well-meaning individuals with two or maybe even more perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to come to a compromise to try and change the industry. So they are talking about work is done. They're talking about work is imagined. They're talking about human factors. They're talking about performance influencing factors. So they're talking about a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think releasing a document on its own can do so much. Because now what's going to happen, and I'm hearing that, right? People talk about work is done and work is imagined. And people talk about a lot of things, but that's not reflecting in what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you think needs to happen in order to move the dial further?
So for me, I think the industry bodies, including the OCIMF and particularly the OCIMF, they have their heart in the right place. They have the right intent. But I think a publication won't do. I think what it requires is a lot of hand-holding of the ship operators.
Mm-hmm.
What it requires, in my view, is possibly to train people like me in human factors. And it should be an industry-wide effort and not through a publication. I'm not saying that everyone should go and get a master's, but I think there should be some sort of a capsule education program which picks people up from organizations and gets them to sort of understand human factors from a systemic perspective, to understand systems, right? So, and start thinking like that, and start thinking in those lines. If A causes B, then maybe B causes A, and there is a C and there is a D. I mean, it's the entire relationships, right? So, instead of looking at the parts, to look at the interactions. Now, these are not things that can come through a video or come through a book. This requires some intense exchange. This requires a program beyond books and a program beyond videos. It requires some sort of a workshop, and I think this needs to be done at the industrial. I mean, at the larger level, at the industry level. And I know there are numerous ship owners, and not everyone may have the time and resources to do it. But I think the bigger ones, right? The larger stakeholders in the industry, they need to sort of coordinate, or the OCIMF needs to help them, at least the larger ones, to say, come on, let's do this program. I've got this program. I want you to nominate a couple of your people. And I think why I'm saying is, an individual in an organization, the conversation becomes it's just one person talking. But when you have two people having the same point of view, and when they are in a room with 5 others or 10 others, just the discussion between these two people is going to multiply the effect.
Yes,
So
definitely.
I would think at least 2 people from every organization they sort of do this program. It could be a month-long or 3-month-long program, but some sort of a program that gives you some deeper insight into what human factors is, other than the superficial phrases, work is imagined and work is done, PIFs, performance influencing factors. We
Yep.
must think about local rationality. I mean, these are things that you put it up on a slide, people read about it. You put up a video, people hear it. You write it in an article or a book, people read it. But I think the interaction that you need to have with, for example, local rationality, getting into the tunnel with the people,
Mhm.
I mean, that doesn't happen without an active exchange,
Yeah.
right? A video or a book or any of those things, a PowerPoint, without an active exchange with a person on the other side, I think
Mhm.
the knowledge remains shallow. It remains superficial. It's good enough to talk about it. You can use those words. You can sound, as if these are things you believe in. But to really believe in these things, I think it requires a deeper root. It requires some time. It requires nurturing. And I think, for me, this is something I know. I mean, it all involves cost and everything. But if you really want to see the industry change, maybe an organization like OCIMF that very strongly believes in this, and you can see that in their publications and in the program that they're trying to roll out. They believe in human factors, and they believe that this is the future, and they believe that this is the way that we need to go. But they cannot walk this path alone. They need the ship operators, they need the owners, they need the seafarers. And in order to get that, we need to start somewhere. And they've already begun the journey. They've begun the journey. But I think what they need to do is uh, reach out to organizations, the larger ones, who have a significant stake, who have a nimble leadership, a future thinking leadership, willing to think creatively. Get a few of them on board, maybe 10 of them on board, which means 10 companies across the world are sending 2 people each for a month-long or a 2-month-long training program, where someone from the OCIMF or one of these, one of the institutions, maybe Lund, maybe Griffith, who knows, but go somewhere and do this in-depth, deep engagement with human factors, right? And make these
Yep.
champions in these organizations, and 2 of them, one wouldn't do, at least 2 of them. And that's something I'm uh, uh, quite clear on, because one person, the
No,
multiplication is very, very small. With 2, I think it's exponential, and 3
it
makes it
is.
even better. Just the discussion among 3 people, just the discussion among 2 people, everyone else listening in, I think they get a different perspective, rather than just one person talking. And when that one person speaks, is generally coming from a completely different point of view, and it could appear like teaching. It could appear
Yes.
like I'm telling you what to do, and it could appear like this is the right way to do it. But if you have 2 people discussing it, it a lot more organic. So I think, for me, yeah, that would be I think the fairy dust. Maybe this could be the fairy dust.
And I've had a thought while you were talking there, and that's basically my job here, just to listen to what people say and just say what comes into my mind, which is why I love what I do. Um, is I get the sense that what your industry needs is maritime industry of human factors in India. And I think you should be the man to head it up. And I think you should then contact these large oil consortium people, these groups, OCIFM, whatever it
IMF.
is, IMF, should contact them and say, look, this is the group. We want to raise education in seafarers, in organizations, in owners, in cargo handlers. I've got a master's in in human factors. Let's work together and start raising the education and the awareness and the curiosity in the industry for human factors and see what we can do. And I think you've just created your own industry there, mate. I think you just created your own job.
Yeah, you see, a lot of, almost the very few people I know who have some sort of a academic background in human factors in the maritime industry. Can you take a guess from which country are they?
I would probably guess England.
Okay. So I would. It's not far. It's the Scandinavia. Everyone I know is Danish, right?
Okay.
And there is someone else who is from the UK, but she's working in Denmark again. So somehow it's in that kind of, yeah. So it's UK and possibly the I mean possibly Denmark. So these are two countries, and primarily Denmark, where I think the human factors in maritime is focused, where people speak this language, and a lot more people speak this language than in any other part of the world, right? And also, and the other thing, because I noticed you spoke about human factors in India, I have absolutely no knowledge about the spread of human factors in India. I saw one Dr. Vivek Jain on LinkedIn. I think I'm getting his name right. He's a professor who posts sometimes on LinkedIn on human factors, but otherwise I don't see much in that space, right? And I wouldn't even say India. I think if you look at the entire and what I at least see on LinkedIn, and what I see the papers published and the authors, they're from certain parts of the world, right? So you have Australia, you have Europe, the UK, America, and maybe South America. I think there is one oil company, I think, that's taking a lot of interest in human factors. So there is some bit of traction in South America, in Brazil. But this is where it is, right? So there's an entire continent, and there are many continents that are, I mean, you don't see this discourse happening. It might be just those small individuals here and there who are talking about this. But now you had a conference lately. That was in Europe, right? So people like me, we don't have conferences to attend unless I'm willing to fly all across the world and stay in a hotel for a week. So there's a lot of cost for people in this part of the world to really develop themselves professionally. No conferences to attend. You're limited to what is on social media. You're limited to books and publications, and books are also in this part of the world expensive. So, and sometimes not even available. So I think that is also something that the human factors industries need to look at. Move out of your traditional strongholds and colonize the rest of the world.
This is what I'm saying. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. Start the revolution. Start the revolution yourself. The organizations will give you money to hold conferences. They will support your education endeavors. They will come over from other countries, and they'll want to work with you in this burgeoning industry of human factors in the maritime industry in India. I'm just sowing little seeds here. That's all I'm doing. I'm just putting little seeds in your brain just so that see whether they take flower. You don't look convinced.
Maybe I'm not. No, it's not that I'm not convinced. Maybe I'm not the person. I'm not as charismatic. I'm not as. I don't have the skills to do that. That's my imposter syndrome, whatever else. But that's where I am. I don't think I'm that person. But I think there should be someone. There should be a small group that's doing it in this part of the world. That's doing it in other parts of the world. And
So what do we need to do then? What do we need to do to find these people? Is there anything we can do?
I think you've spoken to me. You've done, you've done a lot already.
Is there anything further we can do to help raise awareness, to get people talking about these types of things?
See, that's an intent I have when I post on LinkedIn. Of course, I'm testing my own hypothesis. I'm testing my own views. I'm seeing how much of challenge I get, and because. And what I've realized is most people, they don't really interact on LinkedIn. They read it and they come back and tell you, I like what you're doing. Right. Yeah. And that's in a sense of, I don't know if it's the content that they like, or if it's that I'm putting myself out there, making myself vulnerable. Is that what they like? I'm not very sure. But what I'm saying is even the interaction on LinkedIn is limited. I'm seeing the posts that I have been putting up. Now the interaction is primarily from human factors people, not from the maritime people. And I have to change that. I need to find a way to change that, to get the maritime people, my maritime colleagues, to interact with, what I'm putting up, rather than the established human factors people, right?
Yeah. So it's more of a pull conversation as a push conversation.
Yes.
And the maritime people want to learn more about it, as opposed to you trying to force it on. Are there any large human factor institutions or consultancies even in India?
Not that I know of. There are people who call themselves human factors. So there was human factor experts. And why I say this is because we had approached someone because someone who said that they do accidents, human factor investigations, and we got access to a report that they shared with us, and it was just tables there. There was nothing human factors about it, right? I mean, it was just a table that called itself human factors, and so there was the language. It did not reflect. It was not descriptive. It was normative. The root causes were there. You had all of those, the typical find and fix sort of an investigation report. So there are people who call themselves human factor experts, and I see them on LinkedIn also. But I have my doubts.
Yeah.
Honestly, when someone calls themselves human factor experts on LinkedIn, I think that itself should be caution enough, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think when anyone, and this is only my opinion, and it sounds similar to yours, when people call themselves an expert or a specialist or something along those lines, it's a bit of a natural deterrent for me, because it's very presumptive that they are the expert or they are the specialist in that area, and it kind of makes me pull away a little bit. I've got to be honest with you as well. But I hear you there.
Yeah,
Well, let's think about it. Let's think about it more, because I know people in the human factors industry as well here in Perth, and I know that they've got business in different parts of the world. So maybe after this video, we can continue our discussion.
Absolutely.
And I'll introduce you to some of the people that I know. They're actually from the UK that work here in Perth, and they've got business all over the place as well. So maybe we can start to move the dial on this and start to increase awareness and creating that pull conversation as opposed to the push conversation that we talked about.
Yeah, we could. See, I mean, just one thing. I'm maybe extending this, but even those people who write human factor experts, I think they have a local rationality. They are catering to a business. They are feeding, or they are filling in a vacuum where, because the industry wants human factors. Oh, we need human factor investigations. We need human factors training. Oh, here I am. I'm the human factor expert.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think they're
Okay.
feeding that. Yeah, they're feeding that. That's their rationality for using that. So
yeah,
I wouldn't grudge them that, but I would be careful of engaging with them as human factor experts.
Yeah.
As human beings,
They're
yes.
literally. They're literally for a very small piece of the pie, whereas we're talking about how do we shift an industry's thought pattern around it, as opposed to just being there just to put a band-aid on a scratch, because that's what you're getting paid to do, as opposed to actually make a difference. Okay, yeah, I hear you. It's been amazing talking to you.
Wonderful,
Thank you
David.
so much for coming on. I know it's been a bit of back and forth because life gets in the way. I had lots going on with moving house and university and all this kind of stuff, and then you had some things going on. But I'm so glad we've actually managed to carve out a bit of time and have this conversation. And thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been amazing, and I'd love to get you back on in the future and see how we're going, and if there's anything. Any initiatives, any conversations starting, anything along those lines, it'd be great.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm embarrassed. I will be embarrassed seeing myself in the video, but yeah, I think it needs to be done sometimes. I need to look at myself and feel embarrassed and get over it. So thank you, David, for getting me on video. I've never done this before.
No worries, maybe this is the start of the raising awareness. If you can hang around for just a few moments, I'll just say goodbye to people, and then I'll come back and just have a quick check-in with you. So thank you again. So everybody, there was Abhijith talking about human factors, talking about India, talking about the maritime industry. It's such a complex, rich conversation around contextual differences around the world, and how they affect where we're at currently in our safety initiatives. It's amazing. It's such a diverse, complex and interesting conversation. I hope you all took something from it. And if you are in human factors, if you are in the maritime industry, and you've got help or advice that you can give, then please feel free to reach out. I'll be putting contact details at the bottom of this video, or please feel free to reach out to me, and I can put you in contact with Abhijith as well. So Yeah, I'll just put that shout out there as well to anybody who's got any information or any knowledge that could be of help or a service to help, help with this dial being moved. So thank you again, everybody, for watching and subscribing. It's very much appreciated. And I look forward to bringing you more interesting and insightful conversations further down the line. Take care, everyone.